When you get your life back, what will you do, Arjun?
We've been very fortunate on Filme Shilmy to be in conversation with some exceptionally talented filmmakers. The filmmaker I'm joined by today, he joined us many years ago for Gulabo Sitabo, and now we're speaking about his upcoming film I Want to Talk, and he's one of my favorite filmmakers in the contemporary space of Hindi cinema, and that is of course Shoojit Sircar. So Shoojit, thank you so much for joining us on Filme Shilmy, and congratulations on your upcoming film as well.
Thank you so much, Anuj. So nice to connect again, and I'm really excited to talk about I Want to Talk.
Lovely. Right. Well, look, I think Sardar Udham, Shujit, I think you know how much I was very deeply moved by the film and what significance it had on me, profoundly, culturally, historically, socially, everything. And I think I was very, very curious to know, what your next film would be. And when I saw the trailer of I Want to Talk, I was like, it's a very fascinating story that you've picked up, especially after Sadarodam. So, for you, what went through your mind at that point, especially after doing such a big film like that, and then now exploring a very poignant, comical, but very deeply thought-provoking story like I Want to Talk?
Well, um, I have never done a film where, you know, that I have to do a film. It's always somewhere um, I am deeply related to those films and those subjects um, which has mostly changed me as a human. I mean, even if before the film is made, I'm not taking after the film. The idea itself, the idea gets germinated, that you hear this idea and you really are touched by that idea, of the story. So, and for me, every film is like an evolve. I'm constantly evolving as a human being also. Um, so, so this is one of my friend's story. So one day we were just on a podcast and talking, and I got to know about, we were just on one podcast, and then we kept talking, and the inspiration that I got from his life, the the adversities, the ups and downs that he has gone through, I was amazed. Sometimes then you feel like yourself that okay, you have so many complaints in your life, but when I when I started talking to this friend of mine, I figured out my problems are just nothing, just so minuscule. I'm fortunate that I am laughing, talking, doing anything. And that man is laughing and talking and enjoying and cracking jokes with so much of other issues, whether it's a little health issue or his relationship issue that is going through. And I thought this simpler things of communication is so important. I know we all have a lot of everyday gyan, everyday lectures coming on communication and all that. But I thought that communication, that I always, what is that one thing that you want to do that you would say, I just want to talk, sometimes. And for this character, this talking was so important. And I thought, and there's a little bizarreness in the character in this film, what Abhishek
Hmm.
Bachchan is playing. So that touched me and that changed me as a person also. While I was scripting it and I was listening to the story. So I thought, if it has changed me as a person, has evolved me, then why not to do a film on this? So this film is also I have stopped calling it a father-daughter story. I call it a daughter-father story.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so that's this film is all about, and that's how it hit me. So I've been working on this since 2020.
Hmm.
So since then, it's been there with me, and the scripting had started. So yeah, and so I decided that I'll do this film, and this title was different. So, but later, when the essence of this character was that he just wants to talk, so I
Hmm.
kept I want to talk as one of the titles of the film.
I'm curious to know what the other title was, actually. I wonder.
No, that was the name of the character. There was many titles which came in working, but this came at the last moment, and I thought this is the right one. So, and I came up with this title. So,
Hmm. And I like the word you used to describe Abhishek Bachchan, bizarre, because I feel like the word bizarre is a very interestingly used term for the male characters, I think, for many of your films. Even if I look back at October, I look
right,
at Piku, a lot of your Gulabo Sitabo, Amitabh Bachchan's character,
right.
I feel you have a very fascinating way of making quirky characters as a dialogue of life and different situations. They, in a way, your male characters seem to represent a sense of dysfunctionality between human emotions and what society is and what society thinks. And I really like the way you've done that because that's a very rare representation we've had in Hindi cinema, where we've had, of course, you've had the emotionally vulnerable characters, no doubt, but
Right, right.
dysfunctional characters, societally dysfunctional characters, बहुत rarely ऐसा हुआ है, if at all. So ये quirkiness आपके जो male characters के अंदर है, do you think it's also somehow maybe I don't know if it is at all, but maybe just a take on your life and perhaps the way you perceive things and the way you've seen other people also behave as well?
Of course, Anuj. I mean, and this is like, you will have to have it in you. I mean, otherwise, it can't be borrowed. You will. So I see it. I mean, I see it in a humorous way. As I said, that the life will come with all twists and turns and adversities. It just not giving up. One is not giving up like that, but one is not giving up with a smile, which
Hmm.
is okay. Come on, life, come to me. You want to do this? Okay, let's do this. So your twists and turns in life, and I found Abhishek as a character quite vulnerable. The personality he is, that I know him
Hmm.
because of his my constant visit in the with Mr. Bachchan
Hmm.
at his home because of my other films. I knew him for quite some time, and my character, my friend's character, is also quite similar. That the all the adversities in the trailer, what you see that he's going through,
Hmm.
he just he just it cracks a joke on it. But they have much more deeper insight into it, how to live life.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's what the film is all about. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to pinpoint this a bit further actually about the male characters because I think it's a very important dialogue to have because we don't have this dialogue enough and conversations enough about male characters and the way the way that they're very poignantly portrayed in Hindi cinema. We often have this very kind of like mard ko dard nahi hota type of characters which are very heavy on machoism, but I think the selection of actors that you've had in your male roles have been very intriguing. I think even if we look at Piku, for example, Mr. Bachchan, Varun was a very interesting choice in October. I remember back then we also spoke very extensively about that when the film came
Okay.
out.
Yeah.
There is a certain sense of I think vulnerability that you
Yes,
look
of course.
in the male actors, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Now, how do you sense that? Like the ये जो instinct आप में है, and I know it's very difficult to pinpoint, but I would just love to know where does that instinct come from? Do you think it's kind of rooted from a very important aspect of your life as well? Because I feel like it's a very rare thing that a filmmaker can do is identify within an actor.
Well, vulnerability is uh, it's such a description. It's kind of a description which is so people take it as a so feminine, you know. But I mean, it is. I mean, that feminine nature in you is always there. We normally don't show it out. We normally don't come out of it. And don't show it off. But that feminine nature is there inside. Which is deep inside. Um, that caring in nature, and it comes in, and it can be seen in your eyes. It can be seen in your mannerisms. Um, Like in my films, I don't have to do an overdose of woman empowerment. It naturally flew with Piku, or in October, October, the girl's mother is a single mother who is a lecturer in IIT, Indian
Hmm.
Institute of Technology, and she runs the family herself. In Gulabo, whether it's Begum who is like that, who's independent and does it, and in Piku, whatever it is. So, so for me, the choice of actors, yes, I see those feminine qualities. Do they have those or not?
Hmm.
And I found that yes, Abhishek has that. I mean, in terms of his vulnerability, what you're saying, and that warmth. When I met Abhishek, when he did a very good scene, I would go and hug him. He was like I would just give him a nice tight hug,
Hmm.
and he will be also so polite to take it. So I found a lot of warmth in him, and I wanted that warmth in this character. And even if you see October in with Varun, he was so he was arrogant and all that, he was jittery and irritated, but still there was some kind of a charm or a casualness about him which attracted me towards Varun Dhawan, like Dan. I saw a lot of Dan Varun Dhawan in him.
Hmm.
Deep inside, maybe he's got that childlike innocence. And I saw the similar thing in Abhishek too, that little childlike innocence.
Hmm. I remember Varun when I interviewed him for October, he mentioned oddball, the word oddball to describe Dan. But I think more than the dysfunctionality aspect about your male characters, as I mentioned earlier, I also do think that they're very internalized. Like if I look at Sardar Udham, okay, now this film could have gone either way. It could have either been a very uh colorful film where it's kind of, celebrating patriotism with all its might, which is also a good thing, which is not a bad thing. But at the same time, it could have also been a very gritty and hard-hitting film. But I think the approach you took was very internalized. He was almost like a silent warrior, almost like a
True.
silent one. There
Right.
was a sense of zen that he had
Right.
within him. And
Right.
this is not just to do with Sardar Udham. I think all your characters, even if I look at Piku, even though she was quite hot-headed and even though she was quite a peaky character, but फिर भी एक internalization थी. Now, for you as a filmmaker, when you are living in a world which is so external, everything has to be out there where, you got social media where it's literally showing off everything. How difficult is it in this day and age to still maintain that internalization of characters and not perhaps fall for the trick of the trade of trying to go overtly overboard and be very loud, and I know it's something you don't try to do because it's you, but still it still requires a certain skill set to balance that.
For Sardar Udham, I mean, if you think of of the character,
Hmm.
you see him in London at the age when he's 39 or 40,
Yeah.
Now, just imagine a 19-year-old boy, 20-year-old boy, the what happened that one night in Jallianwala Bagh, that changed his course of his life, that changed he became a man on that night. He
Hmm.
became, he was dead that night. Internally, he was dead because he's seen so much of bloodbath and so much of, you know, injured that he was saving. I think somewhere he reached that zen uh, in his mind. He became numb.
Hmm.
So that's why character was like that. So, internalizing the characters, even for a Dan, there is something else that you see. Uh, it's very important. In my film, I somehow, uh, I've tried. If this is the character arc, if this
Hmm.
is the film external that you're seeing, you know, but you take home this, something like this. You're
Hmm.
watching this, but you're taking home something else. It's somewhere deeper inside. It strikes you, hits you. You try to relate to yourself, who we are, what we are doing, what did I do, something. So I have a feeling that cinema Where it hits, you don't know, but it somewhere it does an internal work internally on you. And same with the character that you see, that even if he's talking, doing things, some all kinds of activities that on the scene, performing, but somewhere deeper inside, I am connecting and I'm with an audience, with the
Hmm.
viewer who's watching it. So I think that's what I've tried to do that. I'm trying to strike a conversation.
Correct. Now, I'm not comparing, but I think if there is any filmmaker in today's day and age who, or filmmakers rather, who I think that can really carry off that essence of life, um, and sort of represent it on a mainstream way, which is almost kind of borderlining on uh art house. I mean, I don't like to really categorize films, but there is someone who can do it like Rishikesh Mukherjee. I would say it's you. I really think, I really do think that the art that he had of showcasing really sometimes very emotional stories. You know, even if you look at a film like Good Day, it's like losing innocence. You know, a story about
Yeah.
loss of innocence,
Yeah.
but done in such a soulful way. You also have this very good knack of doing that. But I think also another thing why I find it fascinating as well is because a lot of your films talk about death. There is a very there is a very lively way of the way you represent death, and I think that is such a rare quality which again not many filmmakers can do, because it's so, like I said about the external side, it's so easy for you to go overboard, to indulge in the drama, for it to be very loud and garish ताकि आसानी से लोग connect कर पाए उस चीज से. But
Ji.
you managed to have a very very hopeful lens about death. Shujit, how has that come about? How has that lens developed for you as a filmmaker?
Like for example, I lot many time I tell people that I am not fearless, I am fear free.
Hmm.
So you know it makes me fear free, that film or anything, that especially the death, why it's become a very, whether it's in Piku or in all the films, whether October or all the films. uh, I think somewhere, when you're growing, you are aging also, you are relating with it somewhere, and that it has always, philosophically, it has always fascinated me, you know in terms of knowing the fact that's the most inevitable thing I can do. Ultimate truth is death.
Hmm.
So there is no other truth than that will happen, I'm sure.
Hmm.
So it's so anything to do with death just makes me smile and laugh, and and see it very in a satirical way. So s- so you are absolutely right that somewhere death has always given me a little hope.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that okay, I'm relieved.
Hmm.
you know so all in all the films is somewhere it deals with that.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting you said about satire, because we've had like two really good examples of that. Like you've had Sky's Pink and then you had Ram Prasad Ki Tervi, which kind of talks about death in a very light-hearted manner. And I think even here
Hmm.
as well, you know, the way Abhishek's character really takes on that news. I mean it's devastating, but the way, you know, you've kind of done that. I mean, has there ever been a time though, especially when you are sort of showcasing a very tragic story or a heart-wrenching story, where you are conflicted as a filmmaker, you know, ever? Has there ever been a conflict where you're like, but it's actually very serious, you know, why am I handling it in a certain light way? Has that dichotomy ever come in your life ever?
No, I never. For me, it is. I have taken it that lightly, because uh, that every moment is that every moment is going to change. It's going to surely change. I mean, even if I take it seriously tomorrow, that if I look back at that seriousness, I may laugh at it. I said, "Oh shit, I was worried about that. I've
Hmm.
crossed it. Now what?" At that time, I was really stressed. So now, then it makes me easy to think and take it non-seriously. Because now my last incident that has happened with me, as an example, that it made me move on, and that those problems that was there 2 years back, where I was going nuts. Now see, I've crossed it, and I'm here sitting with you talking. So I see that sense. So now I've started taking it very lightly. I mean, not now. I mean, even during Piku also, I took that whole situation. It was a very serious subject.
Mm,
Even Vicky Donor was a serious subject on infertility. But you saw it in a very, you drive through situations of life. But I don't know. It's maybe inside me that I see humor in everything. You know, even if I'm sitting down and just looking out of the window, I go deep into it, and sometimes I smile. I wonder. If you don't wonder and be awe of everything, then it's difficult to lead life every day.
very rightly said. But I think also, I feel like with a lot of the things that you're saying, it kind of makes sense, especially when it comes to the color palette of your films. I feel like you use a lot of blues in your films. I feel like I see a lot of the prevalence of blue. I mean, as a matter of fact, you're wearing blue as we talk right now. So, I feel like that also kind of gives a very sense of zen, right? The color blue. Jab hum dekhte, like I literally went to my bhabhi's house the other day, and she has blue paints, and I felt so at ease just with that color. So, do you feel like that's perhaps why that you use the colors that you do to kind of give that sense of zen also in your films, and
Yes,
they.
absolutely. You got to see it'll come naturally to you, because I think those you get attracted to those colors. And
Mm,
you're absolutely right. Blue is one of my, very dominant color, in terms of um, color palette. And in this one, I was shooting the entire film in US. So it's a story of an NRI,
mm,
so who settled there. So the film is completely shot in US. Um, so I had, and also I didn't want it to showcase like I'm shooting in US. I just wanted to be really organic.
mm,
So the if you see, you don't feel like where it's shot, but it's shot in US. The character is from there. So he's an IITian, and the character is a IITian and an MBA, and he works there.
mm.
So and he still lives there. So that's how it is.
Which again is a very fascinating thing because you could have easily made it a migrant story. Because every time we talk about NRI stories, which I deeply appreciate by the way, when we have stories that actually talk about the lives of Indians abroad and the sort of lives that they're going through. I mean, we had Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway, you had Buckingham Murders recently, which really does talk about the really gritty and dark side of what, Indians living abroad actually go through. But the fact that you didn't indulge in a story which is a migrant story essentially, and more about life and dealing with bad situations positively, again, that was a very good choice of decision. But was there ever a temptation for you to really divulge into it being a migrant story as well?
Never. I never. I was not into migrant story. This story I could have told anywhere,
Hmm.
but as it was, I was dealing with a very real life situation.
Yeah.
So I thought, authentic in terms of authenticity, I should shoot this, film this in US. That's what my producer Ronnie Lahiri, he suggested that you should, film there, because it has got its own world which you will not find in somewhere else. So we took a small town and outside LA, and we shot that, a place like Riverside. We went there and we shot that film. And mostly, if you see the film, it's not trying to show where it is. It's just with the characters, if you see. And so it's a one small town in US, and I've picked the one character and straight away dived into their life.
Hmm. And interestingly, you mentioned in your earlier responses that it is not a father-daughter story, but it is about father and daughter. ऐसा कुछ आपने बोला था, right?
Daughter, father.
A daughter father, right. Now, I think this comes at a very opportune moment because uh, Piku will soon be celebrating a decade since its release and its acclaim. And again, that was a very unique representation of the father and daughter dynamic, where, the daughter seems to sort of look after the father, and, she's almost like the Shravan of her father. And I think
Right.
there's definitely seems to be a sort of a layer of course, not comparing it to Piku, of course, but there seems to be that sort of a a beautiful dynamic that you've explored here in this film. So I think over these last 10 years, how much has it, if at all, really impacted your perspective of what a father-daughter dynamic really means, in the profound sense, in a more emotional sense as well?
Well, I have two daughters,
Hmm.
and so when you have daughters, and then at home also, at personal level also, the whole dynamic changes. Um, uh, their sensitivity and what they go through as a girls, and as a slowly becoming, going to teenage, and then growing as a woman. So I think all that affects you, and similar thing that I've tried in Piku, and in this one also. In this one, it deals with a teenage daughter.
Hmm.
So uh, there is a lot of relationship gaps that remains, which you don't realize. By the time you realize, you are quite old enough.
Hmm.
That communication of that closeness, it is there, but you think you understand everything about your daughter, and your daughter about your father, but still that relationship is uh, somewhere strained also, and how they are how they are trying to keep it straight, and talk openly about it, and communicate. So I think for me, what has happened is, yes, it is evolved. It is evolved. My relationship with my daughters from Piku onwards, yes, definitely has evolved, but still there are gaps.
Hmm. But I
And
think life will definitely fulfill, though, right? I think life will definitely fill those gaps, I'm sure.
yeah,
Because,
of course, of course, of course, they understand. I also understand. But sometimes your nature is like that. You are, what you're expected, that you are unable to sometimes. Like in Piku, Bhaskar Banerjee was a blabberhead. So, and she was always getting irritated because of his constant talking and constant his issues. But then that's what relationships are all about. You have to go and sail through that.
hmm. I want to talk a bit more about Piku, though, because obviously it is the 10-year anniversary is a big one. And I think at that point it was also very unexpected. Of course it had a big cast. I mean, of course, with Deepika, Irfan, so Amitabh, so of course. I mean, it was a very well known cast, but I think the sort of the film was as such, where people were not sure where or how it was gonna do. I think it took us all by surprise for sure. I think for you, as surprised as we were, sorry, as audiences, how surprised were you actually with the way the product turned out to be? Because honestly, I mean, I love Deepika a lot, and I think this is one of her best performances, and will always remain one of her best performances till date. So, how surprised were you with the way the product turned out?
When we started working on the idea, and also when we were in the middle of the script, I mean, I was absolutely enjoying and laughing every day on every scene, and things was coming in, and I would bounce, okay, this line, we will play like this with the character. And then when it translated, when I pitched to all three of them, and they came on board, and they came with a lot of joy.
Hmm.
They didn't come to the film with a lot of task that I'm going to. They came with a lot of joy, and they opened up themselves. They bared themselves. That what naturally Deepika would be, that's what she's playing in Piku. That's what she is, actually, in real term. Mr. Bachchan is also like that. He wants to play that kind of a, pranks, and he will talk, and he will give this. All that is there. And Irfan also was hanging there. somewhere in the middle of this Bengali family where he didn't know what to do. So there
Mm.
was a lot of joy, and also, so I think what you're asking is, I of course didn't expect, because a lot of people told me before the release that you made a Bengali film. You
Oh,
made a Bengali film. So, but I told them no. I mean, it's a very common problem in every family. So it's a common story. Of course, it's a very drawing room film. It's like a drawing room of a family. And what happens? Then I told them, you put a camera in your at your home and just record for 3 hours in the morning what you do and what you talk, and you will be laughing at yourself that I do this. Did I do I do this every day?
mm,
Any family. So the kind of conversations are on the table, on the breakfast table, or in the kitchen. It's same. It's exactly the same every day.
mm,
And then you go. So I think I didn't expect this kind of. I definitely thought cinema lovers and some Bengali people will go and watch this film.
mm.
But so much love, I didn't. I didn't. And people started calling their kids Piku. They started naming their newborns Piku and all that. So that was so wonderful.
Mm. I'm curious to know though, were these your first choices? Because I know for Sardar Udham, you said you wanted Irfan to do that role, and obviously, things, I don't know what happened between there and then, but that never happened. And obviously, I mean, Vicky was great, of course, but was Deepika always your first choice in the film, or was there anyone else that you wanted?
So it was actually for Irfan and for Mr. Bachchan, it was already set. While we were writing the script, we told them that this is the character that we're coming to. That was it. With Deepika, we had couple of choices.
Oh.
Uh, we didn't know who's going to play Piku. So few names dropped up, like Pariniti was there, one of the choices at that time.
Mm,
So we didn't know who to actually. Um, but then I got to know that Deepika showed has some interest in working with me also through some friends I came to know. Then I think I went. From in my mind when I was writing, Deepika was always in my head.
mm,
Like in this film, I want to talk. Uh, a lot of suggestions came from a lot of people, a lot of actors. But in my mind, when I was writing, Abhishek was always there, and finally it landed in Abhishek's lap.
mm. Oh, again, you make me very curious. Which other names were you thinking of? Because it makes a difference, because it's like so many times you see casting coups and they've not worked out, and you just think, अगर वो actor ऐसे play करता तो कैसे होता, So who would
See,
you?
also there was a little Vidya Balan was also in our head. We never went approached her,
Yeah,
but generally because she's played a bong and she also looks Bengali. But there's some kind of a Bengaliness in her, and in terms of because of Parinita. But these names cropped up in our discussion. Yeah.
interesting. That is very interesting. Even for I Want to Talk though, you said who else were you thinking about? Because I think it's very fascinating because I don't think anyone could have played it other than Abhishek, to be honest, now thinking about it really. Because it just seems very naturally him.
No, it would have been Irfan, otherwise not. And I found what Abhishek has done is a very top notch.
Yeah, 100%. Now your fondness for Irfan is something which I think I've always hear on podcasts and interviews that you've done. I think he's one of the rare actors which I really pretty much 100 on 100 matches your sensibilities as a filmmaker. And I think his demise has left such a huge gap in the industry, and I think he's such a rare talent where, it's so difficult to find a gem like that. With Sadar Udham, I would love to know actually, what was there a delay in making that with him? And when things don't go as expected for you as a filmmaker, how do you not allow that disappointment to get to you personally and kind of let it affect your psyche as well? Because it can get demoralizing at times.
No, it was. I mean, it's not that it wasn't demoralizing for me. It was, but then you'll have to pull yourself up and and do it. So when I spoke with him and told him about this, Um, and then he said, Dada, you move on. Because it got delayed first because of the research and the plan and how to do it. But then we were about to go and do it, and then whatever happened. And then I kept on waiting. But this was a subject that I wanted to do at some point. I would have done it, you know. So there was a lot of dilemma in terms of that what to do. So the demoralizing factor was absolutely there. Now, at some point, you have to pull yourself up and take it. And I think Vicky fulfilled it quite well.
Yeah,
Vicky did absolutely fascinating to see how Vicky transformed himself to a 20-year-old boy, to a 40-year-old man, with those internalizing the whole character. So I think, yeah, working with Vicky, and every day the film moved on. We were into the film, so we kept on moving. But yes, it at some point it did demoralize.
Interesting. Now, obviously, with Piku 10 years on, I think that can be rightly said that it was a massive game changer in your career. Um, I think also when you look at that movement of life before and after, I think because obviously, like you said, people thought it was a Bengali film, but I thought it was a beautiful homage to your roots as well. That's what I felt from that watching that film. Do you feel like there's also been a massive shift now in terms of being that middle ground? Because that's how I see you, Shujit. I see you more as a middle ground of mainstream that was also kind of art house as well in its own way. So do you feel like you've also felt that that was a very big encouragement for you to really make that shift, in terms of bringing the stories that you do?
No, I won't say that, because I think since there's one more film which I have done with Mr. Bachchan, titled Shoe Bite.
Yeah.
So that is never it didn't release, due to some issues of some between the studios and whatever. So anyway, so it's not that I would have continued in this path, because before that I did Madras Cafe, which was also a very, very at that time an offbeat political thriller.
Mm.
That was all about the assassination of our Rajiv Gandhi. Uh, um, so I would have taken this path of getting evolved with every film. I mean, I won't deviate that is an outhouse or a populist. Somewhere ground I would have stayed. I know that, because I know I won't be able to make an art house film as such, which is an art house film. I won't be able to. Neither I want to be able to make a very, very populist
True.
Bollywoodish film. I won't be. I will be somewhere in the middle ground. That I figured out.
Mm.
And this is also that. So I'm still there. But yes, one thing that I've learned from all these years, is with every film, is not repeating some mistakes that I've done. So that not to do those mistakes. So that's what it is.
And Shoe Bite, I guess we'll never ever. I guess that film will never see the light of day, right? Because I remember seeing like the news of that when I was young as well, and I was very curious to see how it will pan out. But क्या ये फिल्म हमेशा एक राज ही रहेगी या कोई उम्मीद है उसको देखने
I
की?
have no idea. I don't know. They are still trying. I don't know.
Oh, bless. Well, I hope it happens because I think there's this whole thing of re-releases now, which I think is definitely
Yeah.
saving films. But I think also, Shudit, I think it would be nice to get your insight on this very quickly because um, I feel like the industry is going through a massive transition period. I feel filmmakers right now, through the re-releases, are number one, somewhat igniting that love for Hindi cinema that was kind of lost during the pandemic time. And also, secondly, it's kind of also trying to gauge which sort of flavors of films from the past is working for them to kind of work on that and present it in a new way as well. So what do you think about this whole transition period of the film industry, and where do you hope that this transition period will reach? Is there a certain phase that you are looking forward to now in the industry, because it's obviously going through such a massive change at the moment?
Well, I would say there has been a lot of Bollywood bashing for the last couple
Yeah,
of years.
indeed.
Uh, but then here I am with the film I want to talk. I am on my line. I have not changed my line. I'm trying to give you a story, um, the cinema that I believe in, the relationships I believe in, the slice of life. So now there are, I mean, if I am able to trying to hold on to my path and create films, then this is the time to support. If you have bashed Bollywood, now here's a film also to support. So if
Mm,
we don't get a support, then from, of course, from film lovers like you and everybody else, then we should not be complaining. I understand that Bollywood at some point making those films, but there are filmmakers who are constantly trying to give you films which can give you hopes.
yeah. No, oh, absolutely. I mean, I said this year actually. Like, I was absolutely devastated when a film like Medan did not work. Because number one, it's based on a national treasure. It's based on, and it's very beautifully aesthetically made as a film, as a sports film. And I just feel like, people are crying and cribbing about good films not doing well. And then when it comes to OTT, they're like, "Arey yaar, kash hum ye cinema mein dekhne jate." This whataboutery is like kind of, in a way, it's destroying the essence of cinema. And I
Right,
am
right.
hopeful that it will change. Are you hopeful that it will change? I mean, I don't know.
Of course, I mean, you want to watch stories. I mean, it's all about stories, how you tell the stories,
Hmm.
and what kind of stories you're telling. Of course, it is not. I think it was a just a phase where something was not happening. But I think there were some good films that people or the audiences didn't or the fraternity didn't support. But there were films. You will have to evolve. You cannot keep on seeing the same thing over and over again. You will have to move on. So, and keep that freshness and novelty.
Hmm. Okay, final question. Uh, I want to talk again is a very beautiful subject you've picked up. But what aage jaake, what's the sort of subject or maybe a film like in the lines of Madras Cafe or Siddhartha that you'd like to do? If there is anything of that nature, that is.
I have a couple of them on a period film and a couple of them, but I think, yeah, a couple of more ideas. But I'll come back to that soon. I mean, I've not finalized it, but yes, I will definitely do something which uh, somewhere are political in nature and addresses some world issues, which are social issues.
Amazing. Well, look, I mean, your film is called I Want to Talk, and boy, we spoke, and we lived up to that title. So I'm really glad that
Thank
I
you.
could have you, Shujit. This interview has been a long time coming, and I'm so glad that you could make the time out to do this because honestly, it's so fascinating to watch your films. And I think you really genuinely are one of the finest filmmakers of our generation, and may you continue being that, and may the force always be with you, as Star Wars always says. So thank you so much, Shujit. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Always such a pleasure. All right.
Thank you. Bye.